So welcome to the world of research. So what we're going to talk about today is different types of research. And we're going to start by talking about the difference between primary research and secondary research. What's the difference? What's the difference between primary and secondary research? So keep in mind that we're a company that manufactures and sells ice cream. What do you think, Nicole? Is that good? No? Not into ice cream? Not for your cavities? Not good for your cavities? So we're a company that manufactures and sells ice cream, and we want to do some research. Why do we do research? Well, one of the advantages of doing research is to minimize our risk. Minimize the risk associated with making business decisions. So it's not about what we think is the best decision. Coming to visit us?
No, I did another course, but I'm so tired and I was here last
Ah,
week,
okay.
So if it's okay.
Oh, okay, no problem. That's okay. So we do research because we want to make the best decisions possible, and we want to minimize the risk associated with those decisions. So we need facts. We need to make fact-based decisions. Well, in order for us to make fact-based decisions, we need to do research. We need to utilize research. And what we need to do is transform information into actionable strategies for our company. So it's not enough just to have a ton of data. We need to be able to evaluate that data and be able to have information that it's going to allow us to make and develop actionable strategies. Things that are going to have a positive impact on the business. So our goals for the company might be to increase market share, increase sales, improve profitability. Those are some goals that a company might have. Well, the question is, how are we going to do that? How are we going to increase the market share of the company? How are we going to increase the sales of the company? How are we going to improve the profitability of the company? Well, we need to do research to find out where there are opportunities. And we could do primary research, right? We could utilize primary research, or we could utilize secondary research. So again, my question is, what's the difference between primary research and secondary research?
So primary research is first-hand, and secondary research is information that's already available.
So the primary research, Genesis is saying, is research that our company initiated. It's original work. An original piece of research that our company initiated. Our company being our ice cream company. Nicole. Our ice cream company initiates research. Our proprietary research. Now, of course, our ice cream company has market researchers and market research managers that work for us, but we could also hire a consulting firm to do the research for us. But even if we hire a firm to do it, it's still research that we initiate. It's an original piece of proprietary research. But secondary research is research that we didn't commission. It's research that already exists. What would be some examples of secondary research that would be available to us? So on the internet, so there's an enormous amount of research that we could access on the internet. And that research could be both qualitative or quantitative. But what are some of the advantages of secondary research? Because what I'm suggesting is that we always utilize secondary research to inform our primary research. So we need to initiate research of our own. But like Sandra is saying, there's already a ton of research that's been done that's accessible to us, especially on the internet. So in terms of secondary research, what are some of the advantages?
Is that available now?
It's available now, absolutely.
It's cheap.
So it is available now compared to research that we're going to commission, which could very easily take us 3 months or more to complete, from the time that we decide to do the research until the time that we develop the questionnaire or prepare the discussion guide for the focus groups, and we actually get to field and conduct the research and analyze the data and prepare a report. Very easily could take 3 months or more to do that. But Bassell is saying the secondary research is available now. Literally, we could go online and download a report for $500, for $5,000. Download it immediately. Available now. That's definitely a big advantage of secondary research. It's available now, and the cost is also very low. So you say, $5,000, that's a lot of money, coach. $5,000 is a lot of money, but compared to what it costs to do primary research, $5,000 is not that much. So some reports are $10,000, but still, when we talk about doing quantitative research, for example, we're talking about spending $125,000. So to download some reports that are $5,000 each, and some are $10,000 and some are $15,000, we're still a long ways from the kind of money we'd be spending on primary research. So what I suggest is definitely access first. It's available now, and it's relatively inexpensive. What else?
Depth research, reports, sorry, depth reports. So you get a lot of
So-
information.
You already know the answer?
What was that?
You already know the result for the secondary?
Yep, so you know the result, it's available now, and so one of the things that Genesis is saying is that there's many reports available. Many reports to choose from. So it's not only just that it's available now, it is, but there's a lot of research that we could choose from. And so what Nicole is suggesting is that we know the answer is that this is going to inform our primary research. So we're going to spend this money to get the secondary research so that our primary research is done properly. You don't want to have to do it over because it wasn't done properly. Now when we do qualitative research, we do multiple rounds. We do several rounds of qualitative research. We could do more than one round of quantitative research. But before you do that, you'd want to know what information is already available so that we're asking the right questions in our primary research. Does that make sense? You don't want to find out, during the research what all the issues are. You should already know what some of the key issues are. Now we just need to validate them. When we develop the questionnaire, you're going to see that not only do we need to have the questions, but we also need to have the answers. And those are the answers that we want to test in our questionnaire to find out if what we thought or what the research suggested previously was correct. So those are some of the advantages. What about the disadvantages? So this is very compelling. And I encourage us to do and utilize secondary research. So utilize the secondary research available. But what about the disadvantages? Because there are some disadvantages that we need to keep in mind. Michelle?
It
could be not applicable as well to your brand versus somebody else's.
Yeah, so it may not be relevant. It's not something that we designed, it's not our research that we commissioned. So it's something that somebody else did. They weren't looking at it from exactly the same perspective or trying to understand the same dynamic in the marketplace. So it may not be relevant.
Information can be false, like.
There's an issue in accuracy. Does it mean it's not accurate? No, but we need to keep in mind that we can't rely on this as if it was research that we did ourselves. So remember, we might be ultimately talking about spending $1 billion on manufacturing equipment to introduce a new product. We can't base that on because somebody uploaded a report to the internet and we downloaded it for $5,000. That can't be the basis for our decision. It's going to help us when we do our primary research, but we need to keep in mind that there may be some issues. But it's okay. This is not a reason not to use the secondary research. We need to understand that this is an issue, like Jahid pointed out, that is a valid issue. We're going to test that in our primary research. So what we find out there, the conclusions, the information, we're going to test that in our primary research. But the thing is, when we do research, we need to know what to test, what questions to ask. This is going to help us with that. So,
Competitors also say it.
what was that?
The competitors also can say it.
So the competitors. So this research is available to everybody. So all our competitors can also download the report. Some reports are free, some are 500, some are 5,000, some are more, but they could download the report. The primary research that we commission is confidential. Our competitors can't see that. Only we can see that. Only our company can see that.
The information may be outdated.
It could be outdated, absolutely. So in some industries that are changing very quickly, what was really relevant 6 months ago, what was really important, is no longer significant. So it could become outdated in a fairly short period of time. In some categories, if the research was done 2 years ago, it could still be relevant, could still be significant. In other categories, not so much. So we need to think about that, whether or not the information that we're getting is outdated or not. What else? Anything else that's a disadvantage?
No, I think that was all.
It could be skewed.
Yeah, it could be skewed. It's somewhat related to not being relevant, but that it's skewed. That the way the research was conducted was skewed towards a particular research objective or towards a particular area that the researchers were trying to understand. Or maybe the outcome of the research was somewhat skewed. When we do research, we're just trying to find out and understand a particular opportunity, consumers, a market, for example. We shouldn't be trying to force the research in any particular way. Whatever the answer is, versus trying to use it to prove a point. So in some cases, maybe the research was done and is skewed towards trying to prove a particular point, to try to prove that a certain decision would be the right thing, which ultimately you're just outwitting yourself, because either if it's the right thing or it's not the right thing, you need to know. Because ultimately, we're using this information to decide the direction of the company and our expenditures. How much we're going to spend on manufacturing equipment. to introduce this new product. All right, so those are some of the advantages and disadvantages of secondary research. What about the difference between qualitative and quantitative research? So whether it's primary research, research that we commission, or it's secondary research, it could be either qualitative or quantitative. So primary research could be qualitative or quantitative. Secondary research could be qualitative or quantitative. What would be an example of qualitative research?
Focus group?
Yes, a focus group. So a focus group is an example of qualitative research. What's a focus group? So a focus group is when we have a discussion with 10 or 12 people for about 90 minutes. We have a facilitator that moderates the discussion. So you have 10 or 12 consumers in a room with the facilitator. The facilitator has a discussion guide. So you can't wing it. We're professional researchers. We need to have a discussion guide. What questions are we going to ask? What's the first question, the second question, the third question? The focus group is going to be recorded, both audio and visual. So the discussion is going to be filmed because the moderator really has to work hard to facilitate the conversation. The facilitator really is not able to jot down notes because they need to really focus on getting those 12 people to share their thoughts, their opinions, their attitudes, their perspectives about what it is we've brought to them. So very often in focus group research, we're going to share concepts. We're going to do what's called concept testing. So we have in the room, we have equipment that's going to record the discussion, both audio and video. And also we have a mirror where executives sit, right? On the other side of that mirror is where the executives sit to observe the discussion that's happening.
I have a question. Would that maybe change the reaction of the people that are being questioned, being under such close watch?
Well, the equipment is not noticeable. It's not like this tripod here. It's in the ceiling. It's being recorded. You don't really think much about, okay, there's a glass wall panel there. People are there observing. They want to hear the executives, the marketing manager, the sales manager, the brand manager. They want to hear for themselves what it is that the consumers say. Because I don't mind telling you that I don't have any good ideas. Okay? And I say that because the only good idea is an idea that the consumers say is a good idea, and they vote with their dollars.
Yeah.
So we could generate ideas, and some of them we might think are very compelling, but it's only the ones that the consumers say they would actually purchase. So one of the things that we look at when we do research is purchase intent. So we want to gauge the level of purchase intent. How likely are consumers to purchase a particular product, for example? And those people that participate in focus groups, we want them to be articulate, people that are engaging, because we need to leverage their experience. People that are maybe experts in a particular field. Let's say if we were researching cookware, pots and pans. Well, we want to ask people that cook on a regular basis. Now, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't get input from people that don't cook, Because we would want to find out why they don't use a skillet or why they don't use a stock pot. But we want to at least get a majority of people that could share what are the issues that they have with their current skillet or double boiler, so that we could design a product that's going to resolve that issue for them. So now it depends on the type of research, what we're trying to find out in the research. So one thing I said was purchase intent. Another thing is when we do research, so we want to find out the level of brand awareness. We said that brand awareness can be aided or unaided. So aided awareness is brand recognition. Unaided awareness is brand recall. Also, it's helpful for us to understand what percentage of the consumers that we question are either users or non-users of a particular type of product. So one of the things that comes out in research when we're looking at brand awareness, so we might ask somebody, we might ask them, okay, so let's say for beverages, we might ask them, have you ever heard of the brand Coke? Now you're probably thinking, is there really a person on the planet that's never heard of the brand Coke? The Coke brand. You know, Nicole, that just the Coke brand, not their manufacturing facilities, not their corporate headquarters in Atlanta, not their office equipment or furniture, but the Coke brand is estimated to be worth $70 billion. Not the soda that they have in the warehouse. We're not even talking about that. Just the value of their brand, an intangible asset. Coke, $70 billion. So we want to find out the level of awareness, but then the next question that we want to understand is, what percentage of the people we survey drink soda? See, so we're going to get a representative random sample. So some people are going to drink soda and some people not. Some people are going to cook, some people are not. Some people are going to eat ice cream, some people not. But the thing is that we shouldn't get too excited when we find out that the level of brand awareness is 97%. So that means that the level of aided awareness in this particular scenario is 97%. That means 97% of the people asked recognize the Coke brand name when they hear it. But then we need to probe further and find out what percentage of the people drink soda. See, that's the thing when researchers get shocked, because they find out that 97% of the people recognize the Coke brand, and then they don't probe and ask, do you drink soda? Or would you buy Coke? So then remember we said purchase intent. Would you buy Coke? Well, if you don't ask that, then the first question, right, that's meaningful to help us measure the effectiveness of our advertising campaign. Right? So brand awareness isn't one of the obvious objectives of an ad campaign, of advertising, of our marketing communications plan, to increase brand awareness, the awareness of our brand. So how do we know that that $50 million that we're spending on advertising, whether it be on TV commercials or print ads in magazines and newspapers or billboards or radio spots, how do we know that that $50 million that we're spending is having an impact? Well, one of the ways that we know is that our brand awareness is increasing. So we do brand tracking studies on an ongoing basis to see if our level of brand awareness is increasing. That's a measure of effectiveness for our advertising, for example. But that's not enough. We need to probe further and find out what is the level of purchase intent. Because it's not enough to have a level of awareness. There's got to be purchase intent. That's an important research area. We need to understand what level of purchase intent exists for our product. So there could be a very high level of awareness for 8-track players, for Fisher 8-track players. Anybody even know what an 8-track player is? No, you see what I mean? So let's say for Fisher branded cassette players, you know what cassettes are, right? So the awareness of the Fisher brand of cassette players or the Fisher brand of VHS players is very high. Okay? 98%! That's amazing! That's good, right? But what about the level of purchase intent? What percentage of the people, so we're so excited, 98% have heard of the Fisher brand of VHS player. But only 6% would actually purchase one. 6%!
She's outdated.
What did I expect?
So we need to make sure we're asking the right questions. Now, when we do the focus groups, one of the things we need to keep in mind is there's only 10 or 12 people that we're having a conversation with. So, remember we talked about population? When we do research, we're looking at a certain population. Who is that population?
The target population.
Yeah, consumers, for example. But we made a distinction between doing a census, that was Sola said, doing a census and a sample. So a census, what is a census? What happens when a census is done?
People are counted.
People are counted and we ask everybody. Everybody completes the questionnaire. Now when we do market research, we don't ask everybody. Because, well, first of all, it's really cost prohibitive, even for big companies. In the United States, you can't survey 350 million people. So we do a sample, which is a percentage of the population. So it's important that our sample is representative of our target market. Government says our target market, that's who we want to buy our product. So the target market is who we want to buy our product. The target audience is who we want to reach with our advertising campaign, for example. So the target market that we identify is going to have certain demographic parameters, certain age group, certain income level, certain occupations, for example. It could be based on gender. But regardless of how we define the target market, we're not going to try and get responses from everybody in our target market, which could be millions of people. We're only going to get a sample, a representative sample. And that representative sample will be able to extrapolate up to the entire population. So if it is really a representative random sample, then the responses of those participants should be indicative of the rest of the population that we're studying. Does that make sense? That's the basis of market research, is that we take a sample, a representative sample of a particular population, and that's representative of the entire population. So we don't need to ask everybody, but if it's done properly, we could get a representative sample. Now, so that being said, when we think about doing focus groups, which is very insightful, we need to do focus groups, which we said is an example of qualitative research. We need to keep in mind that one focus group is 12 people. So we ask a dozen people. So if I'm thinking about spending $1 billion on manufacturing equipment, am I going to base that decision on what Maria, Godwin, Genesis, Abasola, Jahid, Echo, Maggie, Michelle, and Sandra, and Sahad say? 12 people. We're talking about spending $1 billion. 12 people? That's what I'm going to use to base my decision? No. So one of the shortcomings of focus groups, if you will, again, we need to do focus groups, and it's tremendously insightful, is the small sample size. Now, when we do a round of focus groups, actually we do 4 of them. We do 2 in 2 different cities. So we actually do 4 focus groups. 2 in 2 different cities, that costs us $50,000. This is primary research now. We're going to do multiple rounds of focus groups. Because when we're testing a concept, now this is a pot, okay? This is a pot, like a cookware pot. I know you don't think it looks like a pot, but really this is actually a pot. And so the first thing that we do when we do concept testing in these focus groups is we go in with a board. Just basically a cardboard, a piece of cardboard basically, nice cardboard, but basically still a cardboard, with an image on it. Usually it's a rendering, a sketch that a designer prepared, and it has a concept statement. Now, Abasola, now, for the first time ever, a line of range-top cookware with a non-stick coating on the interior and the exterior. So we show that concept board to a group of 12 consumers. Some of them cook, some of them don't cook. Ideally, most of them, for that particular research, if not all, are cooks. Right? They cook on a regular basis. That's separate from another type of research where I was suggesting before, where we want to find out, well, what percentage of the population are users versus non-users? So in other words, what percentage of the population drinks soda, what percentage of the population doesn't drink soda? But for our focus groups, we should focus particularly, no pun intended, on getting people that cook a lot. Because we want them to tell us what are the problems with their current cookware. What are their suggestions on the ideal line of cookware? What are some of the features and benefits that their ideal line of cookware would have? So we go there with a group of concept boards, 6 to 8, sometimes 10, but not more than that because we're only going to be with them for 90 minutes. And we capture their input. Now, based on their input, we're going to refine the concepts. So we made it with 10 concepts, and now, after speaking to 4 dozen, getting input from 4 dozen consumers, we're going to maybe only have 5 concepts left out of the initial 10. And what we're going to do is we're going to refine those concepts. When I say have left, in other words, they might have said, that's dumb, right? That's why people talk during the focus groups. They just say what they think. That's what you want. That doesn't make any sense. There's no need for that. I do this. This one says I do that. I do that. And so we try to establish some consensus in terms of the concept. Then what we do is we go schedule another round of focus groups. This time, instead of the concept board, maybe we go with a prototype. Now we're narrowing down the concepts. Now we'll actually go with a prototype of the product. So we'll actually go with a pot, right? A prototype. It wasn't made as part of the manufacturing process. It's something that somebody carved up. So you make a few of those. It's not something that was made on a production line. It's just a prototype of the product.
We go to the same people?
No.
Different people.
Yeah, a different group of people now.
So only one group sees the picture, and one sees the prototype?
Right. So now we're refining the concept. So we got their input, we're refining the concept, we take it to the next level and develop a prototype. Eventually, we'll have a product sample, something that might have been made as part of a production process. But prototypes are pretty compelling. You could, for example, design them so the weight is equivalent and so forth, especially with pots. Some pots are pretty heavy, especially after you put the food in them. One of the things that consumers say is that they have trouble lifting the pots. So they develop pots that have handles on both sides. So when you pick up the chicken fryer, right, you're able to have better control over the pot. So we would easily do 2 or 3 rounds of concept testing. Now we've dropped $150,000. So that's why but the thing is, so when we do the research, we got to know what questions we're going to ask. That discussion guide has got to be very carefully prepared. That's why it's so important to spend the money on a secondary research, so that when we go into the focus groups, when we're doing our primary research, we ask relevant questions. We're asking the right questions.
Coach, don't you think with the concept board, we may not get the full picture? So why would you change the group now that you have the prototype?
The concept board can be very compelling. Remember, it's the image as well as the concept statement, and the facilitator is there to answer questions. So if they're unclear as to exactly what the concept is, they can ask the facilitator, I'm not sure, what do you mean by that? It has a non-stick coating on the outside. You say, yeah. So the surface that doesn't touch the food is also going to have a coating so that it's easy to clean up. So it's a two-way dialogue. The facilitator asks the participants questions, and the participants can also ask the facilitator questions. So if there is some issue that this is not straightforward enough, maybe it's an electronic product that has a lot of features, they could ask. If the concept board is not clear enough, they could ask questions.
Is it purposely done like the focus group, purposely done so that some people see a picture and some people see a prototype, so that if they do decide to go forward with the product, they will know the reaction for, say, like, let's say if people see the picture of it in like a magazine ad or a TV commercial, they will already know the expected reaction, as opposed to people that actually go to the store and look at it in person?
Well, when we're creating advertising, we want to do copy testing. This wouldn't be copy testing. So what Nicole is saying is that this might actually look like something you would see in a magazine. So there's some body copy and there's a picture of the product. Is that what we're trying to gauge there? How would they react if they see that in a magazine? We would do separate research for that. Because one thing, so for example, you would have a headline. This is not, you're trying to communicate a particular concept. With a print ad, for example, you would have a headline here, and of course you're going to have the logo for your product, or the symbol for a particular product. Here the focus is on getting feedback on the features and benefits of this particular product versus trying to gauge their reaction to a particular piece of advertisement. So an advertisement, a print ad, should be basically final. Like it should be realistic. Although sometimes we use renderings, which is basically sketches. But you'd be surprised how many companies don't spend money on copy testing. Which is really bizarre because it costs, to produce a commercial can cost over $1 million. Some can be done for much less, but some cost over $1 million to produce, and then to air a commercial is also very expensive. So you're spending millions of dollars to produce a commercial and to air it, and then you don't want to spend $50,000 or $100,000 to do copy testing. But companies do that. I mean, we see commercials that come out and then they get a lot of backlash, and you're wondering like, wow, what happened? And you're like, I'm wondering, did they ever do the copy testing? They didn't listen to Coach. See, I told them to do it. They didn't want to listen. They figured, no, let's put it out there and see what happens. And then they end up pulling the ad.
So that's why, like, sometimes when you see commercials that come out this week, and the commercial runs for like two minutes per se, then that same commercial is condensed the following week into like a 1 minute segment with parts of it that was previously played the week before is no longer in it.
Well, it might be that they might have had to edit it based on some of the content, but that should have been something that they had already resolved in research. And it's not so easy for them to edit and swap out commercials. Things have got to be booked months in advance to get placement. In newspapers, it's very easy to get placement. A couple of days in advance. Newspapers is much longer, more like a few months in advance. You have to give them the artwork to be placed in a given magazine. But to go back to one of the points that you made, Nicole, about some people see the concept board and some people see the prototype. You see, the thing is that it's expensive to create the prototype. So these are like one of a kind. So some of these is easily, like to make this fake pot, it could be like a couple of $1,000s. And then you need to have like 10 of them. So now you're spending, $15,000, $20,000 on prototypes. You want to wait until you get enough feedback on the concept. So remember, we had 10 concepts. Okay, so 5 of them weren't received favorably. So those boards, we throw those out, right? That didn't cost us much. The design is time. We have in-house designers who draw the sketches, right? Hopefully they look a little bit better than this. But now we have 5 concepts left. Now, could you imagine if we had to develop pots for all of those 10 concepts? Right, we're spending a lot of money. So spend a little, relatively a little, spend a little, learn a little. So the first step is to go with a concept board, which is relatively easy for us to create and relatively inexpensive. Get feedback, and then once we narrow down the concepts to those that are the most favorable, then we can invest in prototypes. But if you're able to develop prototypes, if for some reason you have, it depends on what stage that you are in the research, or maybe what prior primary research you may have already invested in, or secondary research that you feel confident in, you may be able to go with prototypes in the first round. But early on, if you're going into a category, especially one that you're not experienced in, right? Maybe a company is diversifying. It's very common to use concept boards. Even for companies that have experience in a particular category, use concept boards. It doesn't mean that you can't use prototypes, but usually that's not the norm. So those are focus groups. So then, questions about that? Fun times. Hello. So, concept boards, those are something that we use in the focus groups. That's an example of qualitative research.